Hello everyone, this is Aston Francis. In this presentation is Process Improvements, HP-87 Inventory Program, Automation Case Study 6. I developed an inventory application in around 1982 to 83 while working at the Jamaica Public Service. This was developed on a Hewlett Packard HP-87 PC, and it was written in HP Basic. The ECS department had a small storeroom with hundreds of electronic components and modules that needed to be managed, so I wrote this program on my own. This inventory program was still working at the JPS in around 1993 when I visited there while working as a contractor. That meant that the program was useful. Here is some background information. I immigrated from Jamaica to the US in 1993. This was my graduation ceremony in early 1982 at the College of Arts, Science and Technology. I had just completed my City and Guilds training course, 5th year. The improvements from this inventory program is anyone's guess, from 1 order of magnitude, 2 orders of magnitude. Back in the 80s, the ECS department was divided up into about 3 areas, as shown. Under the physical communications were power line carrier systems, microwave links, telephony, data circuits, and there were battery backup systems. You also had SCADA, which handled the RTUs in the field, the master station for the dispatcher at the system control center, and you had a database that was for the Harris Corporation system. And on the right is the mobile systems. Those handled VHF, UHF, repeater sites, pagers. There were also the other areas, ECS stores. We had test instruments, standby generators. Those are handled by contractors. I worked on the mobile area during Hurricane Gilbert for maybe about 2 months. So I worked in almost all areas of the department. So this was around 1982 to 1983. I wanted to learn programming. So I used the Hewlett Packard HP-87 PC that was there at the JPS to write an inventory program. And the programming language was the proprietary HP Basic. It was very similar to the BASIC language, just a few syntax and keywords were different. And this was in the ECS department on Washington Boulevard. The number of items that could be entered was around 3,000 parts. It had a search by item or part number. It could print out a sorted list for all parts. You could enter new parts and delete new parts or delete old parts. And it had a interesting feature. It could find equivalent part numbers. This was a very useful feature. The finding of equivalent parts was very important because you may not have an exact part available, but there are many other equivalent parts in the stores, and that is very useful to get our systems back up and running because the parts are right there. You just need to know that it is equivalent and it can be used. I architected the solution, wrote the HP Basic code, and did the inventory application 100%. I was not requested to do this job. This software was developed on my own time. It was a freebie for the JPS, and I was not paid. This picture is an exact representation of what the system looked like. The computer was on the left, looks just like that, with a printer sitting on top of a dual drive bay. And those drives were 5¼ inch floppy drive. And that was the database. There was no hard drive because this was around 82 to 83. So the database sat on a 5¼ inch floppy disk. Here is another picture of what the PC looked like, and the price was $2,495. So you know I could not afford this kind of computer back in the early 80s. Here are some specs for the HP-87. Notice the CPU speed is not even 1 megahertz. The RAM memory may have been 64. I remember seeing an expansion plug on the back of so it could have been 64 kilobytes total. The JPS had many telecommunication systems, many towers, and the one you see here on the far right looks exactly like it was at Catherine's Peak in Jamaica. These are pictures off the web. They are not exact pictures of JPS. In Jamaica, we service our systems down to component level. It is much cheaper to replace these parts than to change out a board. The boards are very expensive, so we get out our schematics and troubleshoot and repair transistors, chips, resistors, electrolytic capacitors, diodes, and many other components. Here's an example of a Granger Associates direct-to-line 7300 modem. I repaired these down to component level, got out my oscilloscope, and troubleshoot. Here's an illustration of some of the instruments that I used, and these are either exact or close to exact instruments. We had a high precision HP synthesizer top left, HP spectrum analyzer up to 1.5 gigahertz. We had an HP PAR test set. This was for transmission, check bit error rate, function generator, 6-digit HP multimeter, our old faithful HP 8060A multimeter, our Bird watt meter, and the IFR selective level meter. WaveTech function generator. We had oscilloscopes and many other instruments, noise generator, etc. Here is what the HP Basic Language instruction manual looks like. The code was the old basics, so you had to write line numbers before the code, and these are some examples. I have attached several slides to show my history, training, and education, and work experience. I also built a multi-line telephone interface for the Hunts Bay Power Station B6 control room. This was made using CMOS and similar technologies as shown before. This was done in around 1982, and this worked at the power station for several years. I created this manual for the multi-line telephone interface, and I created two large full-size blueprints. I do not have these blueprints. They're probably there at the drawing office in their permanent records. While working at the telephone company, I requested to work on common equipment and final selectors. This was not my job as a grade 3 technician. I wanted to learn the telephone exchange end to end. So I would check with the senior technician and annoy him and tell him I want to learn the system. These are the actual textbooks that I used in college between 77 and 81. I stacked them up on the counter and took a picture. I bought this calculator in around 1978. It was supposed to be the latest and greatest calculator money could buy, and it was programmable. There was a group of us from the Caribbean that went to the U.S. Virgin Islands for training, which was provided by the United States Telecommunications Training Institute. The companies that trained us were Motorola, AT&T, and Western Union. This is Aston Francis, and thanks for watching.